The morning Natalie Edwards decided she was done being afraid was the same morning she realized fear had already stolen 3 months of her life. She stood at her apartment window on the third floor, watching the dawn break over the residential streets of her neighborhood. The sky bled pink and orange, and she could see the empty sidewalks below, perfect for running. She had been a runner once back in college, back before everything changed. Before that night 6 months ago when a man had followed her for 4 blocks during an evening jog, getting closer and closer until she had sprinted into a convenience store and stayed there shaking until her roommate came to get her. Nothing had happened. That was what everyone kept saying. But something had happened. Her confidence had shattered. Her sense of safety had evaporated, and for 3 months now she had not run a single mile, despite the running shoes sitting by her door and the athletic wear folded neatly in her dresser. But today was different. Today, she was going to reclaim something that belonged to her. Natalie pulled on her leggings and a long-sleeve shirt, laced up her shoes with trembling fingers, and headed out into the cool November morning. The streets were quiet at 5:30 in the morning, just a few lights on in windows here and there. She started with a walk, then a slow jog, her breath coming faster not just from exertion but from the anxiety coiling in her chest. Every shadow made her jump. Every rustle of leaves sent her heart racing. She kept looking over her shoulder, kept checking the spaces between parked cars, kept her phone clutched tight in her hand with emergency services ready to dial. This was not the freedom she remembered. This was torture. She made it half a mile before she had to stop, hands on her knees, breathing hard and fighting back tears of frustration. A woman should be able to run in her own neighborhood. A woman should be able to exist in the world without this constant, exhausting vigilance. But should and could were two very different things. She walked home slowly, defeated before the sun had fully risen. The next morning she tried again, and the morning after that. Each time she pushed herself a little further before the fear became too much. Each time she came home feeling like a failure, like she was letting that faceless man from months ago continue to control her life. It was on the fourth morning that she first noticed him. She was about a mile into her run, keeping to the well-lit main roads when she became aware of footsteps behind her. Her whole body went rigid with panic. She glanced back and saw a man, tall and broad-shouldered, running about 20 feet behind her at the same pace. He wore dark running gear and had earbuds in, his face partially obscured by the early morning darkness. Natalie's heart hammered. She sped up. He sped up. She slowed down, preparing to turn around and run back toward home. He slowed down, maintaining that same 20-foot distance. She was about to bolt when he turned down a side street and disappeared. She stood there gasping, watching the empty street where he had gone, trying to calm her racing pulse. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just another runner. But her hands were shaking too badly to continue, so she walked home. The fifth morning he was there again. Same distance behind her, same dark running gear. This time she watched him more carefully. He never looked at his phone, never looked around. Just ran with steady, even strides, maintaining that exact distance. When she turned to head back home, he turned too, staying behind her all the way until she reached her building, at which point he jogged past her down the street and out of sight. It terrified her and confused her in equal measure. If he was following her, why keep his distance? If he was just running the same route, why match her pace so exactly? By the 10th morning, she had almost convinced herself he was a threat. She had changed her route 3 times, and he always appeared. She had varied her pace, and he always matched it. She ran early one day and late the next, and there he was. The only constant was that distance between them and his complete silence. He never spoke, never acknowledged her, never came closer. Natalie started researching self-defense classes and pepper spray. She told her best friend Maya about the situation. "That is so creepy," Maya said over coffee. "You should call the cops." "And say what?" "A man is running near me. He has not done anything wrong. Following you is doing something wrong." "Is he following me, though, or is he just running?" Natalie rubbed her temples. "I do not even know anymore. Maybe I am being paranoid." "After what you went through, you are allowed to be paranoid." But the thing was, Natalie did not want to be paranoid. She did not want to live her life suspicious of every man who happened to be in the same public space. She did not want her trauma to turn her into someone who saw threats everywhere. So she kept running, and he kept appearing, and the strange dance between them continued. 3 weeks into this bizarre routine, something shifted. Natalie was having a particularly bad morning. She had barely slept, anxious about a presentation at work. She was the assistant director at a nonprofit that provided art therapy programs to underprivileged youth, and they were facing budget cuts that threatened everything they had built. Her mind was spinning with worst-case scenarios as she ran, and she was not paying attention to her surroundings. She stumbled over an uneven section of sidewalk and went down hard, skinning both palms and one knee. She sat there on the cold concrete, stinging with pain and frustration, fighting the urge to just give up on everything. Footsteps approached, and she looked up to see him, the silent runner. Up close for the first time, she could see his face clearly in the growing morning light. He was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges, strong features, and striking blue eyes that held genuine concern. He was handsome in a rugged, understated way, and he was holding out his hand to help her up. Natalie hesitated for just a moment, then took his hand. His grip was warm and steady, and he pulled her to her feet effortlessly. He was even taller than she had realized, probably 6'3" or 4", with an athletic build that suggested he did more than just run. "Are you okay?" His voice was deep and a little rough, like he did not use it much in the mornings. "I am fine," she said, brushing off her leggings. Her palms burned and she could feel blood on her knee. "Just clumsy." He pulled a clean handkerchief from his pocket and handed it to her. Who carried handkerchiefs anymore? She pressed it to her bleeding knee, hyper-aware of his proximity, of the fact that they were alone on this quiet street at dawn. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little tight. He nodded, his eyes searching her face. "I am going to ask you something, and I need you to know I am asking because I am worried, not because I am trying to be intrusive." Her guard went up immediately. "Okay. Are you afraid of me?" The directness of the question stunned her. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally decided on honesty. "I do not know. Should I be?" "No." He took a small step back, giving her more space. "I have noticed you looking over your shoulder a lot, noticed you seem anxious. I started running behind you because I thought maybe if you knew someone was there, someone keeping an eye out, it might help. But I am realizing now that I might be making it worse." Natalie stared at him, trying to process this. "You have been following me to protect me." "Not following. Just running the same route at the same time, keeping enough distance to give you space but be close enough if something happened." He ran a hand through his hair, looking almost embarrassed. "It sounded less creepy in my head." "It is a little creepy," she admitted, but something in her chest had loosened. "But also kind of nice. I think I am very confused right now." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "That is fair. I am Wyatt, by the way, Wyatt Young. Natalie Edwards." They stood there awkwardly for a moment, the handkerchief pressed to her knee, the sun rising behind the houses around them. "I should probably explain," Natalie said slowly. "I had a bad experience a few months ago. Someone followed me during a run." It scared me enough that I stopped running for a while. I am trying to get back into it, but the fear is still there." Wyatt's expression darkened. "Did he hurt you?" "No, but he could have. And that is almost worse somehow, the not knowing what might have happened." "I do know." He said it with a weight that suggested personal experience. "I am sorry that happened to you, and I am sorry I did not realize I might be triggering the same fear." "Your intentions were good," Natalie said. "But maybe next time you want to be someone's anonymous guardian angel, you could start with an introduction." That got a real smile out of him, and it transformed his entire face. "Noted. So what do we do now?" "What do you mean?" "Well, I run every morning at this time. I am guessing you do too. We are going to keep seeing each other." Natalie bit her lip, thinking. The logical part of her brain was still cautious, still worried, but there was something about him that felt genuine. And if she was being honest, there had been moments over the past few weeks when having him there, even as an unknown presence, had made her feel just slightly safer. "We could run together," she heard herself say. "Like, actually together, not 20 feet apart." Wyatt looked surprised. "You would be comfortable with that?" "I think so. Maybe we start with just this week and see how it goes." She paused. "You are not a serial killer, right? Not even a little bit. And you promise to keep your distance and respect my boundaries." "Absolutely." "Then okay, we can try it." That was how their mornings together began. The next day, Wyatt met her outside her building at 5:30 sharp. They started with a slow pace, running side by side with about 3 feet of space between them. They did not talk much at first, just the occasional comment about the weather or the route. But having him there, having him visible and known rather than lurking behind her, made an enormous difference. Natalie found herself actually enjoying the run for the first time in months. Over the following weeks, they settled into a comfortable routine. Every morning, rain or shine, they met and ran together. The conversations grew longer and more personal. She learned that Wyatt had grown up in the area, that he was an early riser by nature, that he found running meditative. He learned that she loved her job despite the stress, that she had a younger brother in medical school, that she was terrible at cooking but great at baking. What he did not tell her, and what she did not ask, was what he did for a living. She noticed he never seemed rushed in the mornings, never mentioned being late for work. His running gear was high quality, and the watch he wore was expensive. But those were just observations, not answers. She also noticed the way other runners greeted him with a certain deference. The way a police officer they passed regularly gave him a respectful nod and called him Mr. Young. The way he seemed to know every shopkeeper and business owner in the neighborhood, and they all seemed to know him. But more than any of that, she noticed how safe she felt with him. How the fear that had plagued her for months began to recede. How she stopped looking over her shoulder constantly and started actually experiencing the joy of running again. It was about 6 weeks into their routine when Maya cornered her at their weekly coffee date. "So are you going to tell me about the mystery running partner, or do I have to stalk your morning route to get information?" Natalie laughed. "There is nothing to tell. We run together. That is it." "That is it. Nat, you have been glowing lately. You talk about him constantly. And do not think I did not notice you describing his arms the other day. I was explaining his running form, you said, and I quote, 'He has really great arms.' That is not running form analysis. That is attraction." Natalie felt her face heat. "Okay, fine. Yes, he is attractive. But it is not like that. We are just running partners." "Do you want it to be like that?" That was the question, was it not? Because somewhere between those silent morning runs and their easy conversations, something had shifted. She found herself looking forward to seeing him each morning in a way that had nothing to do with safety, and everything to do with the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed. The way he always slowed his pace on days when she was tired without making her feel weak. The way he had started bringing an extra coffee for her some mornings, having somehow memorized exactly how she liked it. "I do not know," Natalie said quietly. "Maybe. But I do not even know if he is available. We do not talk about personal stuff like that." Then ask him. What if it makes things weird? What if it makes things great? Natalie mulled over Maya's words for the rest of the week. She tried to work up the courage to ask Wyatt about his relationship status, or to drop hints about her own, but every time she tried, the words stuck in her throat. She did not want to ruin what they had. These morning runs had become the best part of her day. Then, one Saturday morning, everything changed. They were running a longer route than usual, having decided to tackle a nearby trail that wound through a wooded park. It was beautiful, with fall leaves crunching underfoot and the morning sun filtering through the bare branches. They were talking about books, and Wyatt had just made her laugh with a story about his disastrous attempt to join a book club when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression turned serious. "I am sorry, I need to take this." "Go ahead," she said, slowing to a walk. He stepped a few feet away, but she could still hear fragments of the conversation. Something about a quarterly report and investors and a meeting that had been moved up. Business talk, clearly, but at a level that suggested he was not just a regular employee. When he hung up, he looked stressed. "I am sorry, I have to cut this short. Something came up at work." "No problem," Natalie said. "Everything okay, just the usual chaos." He hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. "Actually, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "There is an event next Friday night, a charity gala for the Children's Hospital. Would you want to come with me?" Natalie's heart jumped. "Like a date?" He met her eyes directly. "Yes, like a date, if you are interested." She was interested, she was very interested, but something made her ask, "What kind of event is this exactly? You said charity gala, it is formal, fancy. Probably boring speeches and overpriced food. But there will be dancing, and I would really like to take you." "Why me?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Because I like spending time with you, because you make me laugh. Because these past few weeks running with you have been some of the best mornings I have had in years." He paused. "And because I have been trying to work up the courage to ask you out for the past month, and I am running out of running-related excuses to see you." Natalie felt a smile spread across her face. "I would love to go with you." His whole expression brightened. "Really, really." They made plans for him to pick her up the following Friday, and then he jogged off toward wherever he needed to be, leaving Natalie standing on the trail with her heart racing for entirely new reasons. The next few days passed in a blur of excitement and nerves. Natalie went dress shopping with Maya, settling on a deep emerald gown that made her feel elegant and confident. She got her hair done, agonized over shoes, and tried to ignore the butterflies in her stomach. Friday evening arrived, and she was putting the finishing touches on her makeup when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Wyatt standing there in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking so handsome that she momentarily forgot how to speak. "Wow," he said, his eyes traveling over her. "You look incredible. You clean up pretty well yourself." He offered his arm and she took it, feeling like she was in a dream. But the dream sharpened into reality when they stepped outside and she saw the car waiting for them. It was not just a nice car. It was a sleek black Mercedes with a driver who held the door open for them. "I should have asked before," she said as they settled into the plush leather seats. "But what exactly do you do for work, Wyatt?" He looked uncomfortable for the first time since she had met him. "I was going to tell you. I just did not want it to change things between us." "Tell me what." "I own a real estate development company, Young Properties. We build and manage commercial and residential properties throughout the region." The name clicked in her brain. She had seen it on buildings around the city, on construction signs, in the news. Young Properties was huge, which meant Wyatt was not just successful, he was wealthy, very wealthy. So when you said millionaire, she said slowly, you were not kidding. I have never said that word. But you are. Yes, he turned to face her fully. Does that change things? Natalie thought about it. Did it? She was surprised, certainly, maybe a little overwhelmed, but when she looked at him, she still saw the same person who had silently watched over her morning runs. The same person who had offered her a handkerchief and his honesty. The same person who made her laugh and never made her feel less than. No, she said finally. It does not change things, but I wish you had told me sooner. I know. I am sorry. It is just that people treat me differently when they know, and with you, I got to just be Wyatt, just a guy who likes to run. It was nice. She squeezed his hand. You are still just Wyatt to me, just Wyatt who apparently has a much fancier day job than I realized. He smiled, relieved, and they fell into easier conversation as the driver took them downtown to one of the city's most prestigious hotels. The gala was in the grand ballroom, all crystal chandeliers and gilded decoration. It was easily the fanciest event Natalie had ever attended. But the real revelation was watching Wyatt work the room. People gravitated to him, and not just because of his wealth. He had a natural charisma, a genuine interest in others that made everyone he spoke with feel important. He introduced Natalie to what felt like hundreds of people, always with his hand on the small of her back, always including her in the conversation. She met business associates and city council members and other philanthropists. She learned that Wyatt was on the board of several charities, that he had donated the funds to build an entire wing of the children's hospital. They were there to celebrate. But he never boasted about any of it. In fact, he seemed almost embarrassed when people thanked him for his generosity. During dinner, they were seated at a table with some of his business partners and their spouses. Natalie found herself next to a woman named Claire who immediately put her at ease. So how did you meet Wyatt? Claire asked with a knowing smile. He has been very secretive about you. We are running partners, Natalie said. We met during our morning runs. That is so sweet, and so Wyatt. He is the least flashy rich person I have ever met. Did he pick you up in his regular car or the fancy one? There is a regular car, Claire laughed. Oh, honey, the Mercedes is for show. His daily driver is a 10-year-old truck he refuses to replace because it still runs fine. Natalie filed that information away, charmed by it. When dinner ended and the dancing began, Wyatt led her to the floor. She was nervous, her experience with formal dancing limited to high school prom, but he guided her with easy confidence. You are good at this, she said as they swayed to the music. My mother insisted on cotillion when I was 13. I fought it at the time, but I guess it paid off. Did you always know you would end up running the family business? It is not a family business. I built it from the ground up. He spun her gently. My father was a construction worker. My mother was a teacher. They taught me the value of hard work and giving back. Everything else I figured out on my own. That is impressive. It is just business. He pulled her a little closer. What is impressive is what you do. You change kids' lives through art. That matters more than any building I have ever constructed. She looked up at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt herself falling. This was not just attraction. This was something deeper, something that had been building through all those morning runs and quiet conversations. Can I tell you something? She said softly. Anything. I am really glad you decided to be my creepy guardian angel, even if your execution was questionable. He laughed, and the sound wrapped around her heart. I am really glad you decided to give me a second chance instead of pepper spraying me. They danced until her feet hurt, then retreated to a quiet balcony overlooking the city lights. The November air was cold, and Wyatt shrugged out of his jacket to drape it over her shoulders. It smelled like him, cedar and something clean and masculine. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. "I know this is probably not your usual scene. It is definitely not my usual scene, but I had a wonderful time. Wonderful enough to agree to a second date. I think I could be convinced." He stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "How about this for convincing?" He kissed her softly, sweetly, with a gentleness that made her chest ache. She melted into it, her hands finding the front of his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, and she forgot about the cold and the party inside and everything except the feel of his lips on hers, and the warmth spreading through her entire body. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks." "You should have done it sooner." "I was trying to be respectful, trying not to push." "Consider the boundaries officially adjusted," she said, and kissed him again. They stayed on that balcony until the cold drove them back inside. And then Wyatt took her home, kissing her goodnight at her door like a gentleman, despite the heat in his eyes that promised he wanted to do much more. Their relationship unfolded naturally from there. They still ran together every morning, but now those runs were punctuated with stolen kisses and hands held while they walked to cool down. They went on proper dates, dinners and movies, and a disastrous cooking class where they managed to burn water somehow. Wyatt took her to a charity auction, and she brought him to her organization's annual art show, where he bought 3 student pieces and quietly pledged a donation that made her director cry happy tears. She learned that his bark was much worse than his bite when it came to business, that he was fiercely protective of his employees, that he had a weakness for terrible action movies and homemade cookies. He learned that she sang off-key in the shower, that she had a temper when properly provoked, that she cried at every animal shelter commercial no matter how many times she had seen it. They learned each other, piece by piece, and every piece made her fall deeper. It was not perfect. They had their first fight about 3 months in, when he tried to donate a large sum of money to her organization without telling her first. She felt like he was throwing his wealth around, that he was treating her like a charity case. He felt hurt that she did not trust his intentions, that she thought he was trying to buy his way into her life. They yelled, both stubborn and hurt, and then she walked out of his downtown office with tears streaming down her face. She spent the rest of the day convinced it was over, that the wealth gap between them was too wide, that they were too different. He showed up at her apartment that evening with red eyes and a heartfelt apology. "You were right," he said. "I should have talked to you first. I should have respected that your work is yours, not something for me to swoop in and fix. I just saw a problem, and I wanted to solve it because I care about you and I care about what matters to you. But that is not an excuse." She invited him in, and they talked for hours. Really talked, about money and power and the dynamics between them. About how to be partners without his wealth overshadowing everything. About trust and communication and meeting each other halfway. They came out of that fight stronger, with boundaries set and understandings reached. He promised to always consult her before making decisions that affected her world. She promised to try not to see his desire to help as an insult to her independence. The seasons changed. Winter gave way to spring, and suddenly they had been together for 6 months. 6 months of morning runs and late-night conversations. 6 months of learning to navigate each other's worlds. 6 months of falling more deeply in love with every passing day. Natalie had stopped being afraid, not just of running alone, but of opening her heart, of trusting someone fully, of believing that something good could last. Wyatt had stopped being just a successful businessman going through the motions of life. With Natalie, he laughed more, worried less, remembered what it felt like to connect with someone who saw him for who he was rather than what he had. They talked about the future carefully, both aware that they were building toward something permanent, but neither wanting to rush it. Until one morning in late April, when everything clicked into place. They were running their usual route, the air warming with the promise of summer, when Wyatt suddenly stopped. "I need to ask you something," he said. Natalie stopped too, concerned. "Are you okay?" "I am more than okay. I am happy. Happier than I have been in my entire life. And that is because of you." Her heart started pounding. "Wyatt." "Wait, let me finish." He took both her hands. "That first morning I saw you running, I saw how scared you were, how brave you were being, going out there anyway, and something in me just knew I needed to make sure you were safe. I did not know you. I did not know your name or anything about you, but I felt this pull, this need to protect you." "You did protect me," she said softly. "You gave me back something I thought I had lost. You gave me something too. You gave me a reason to look forward to mornings again. A reason to care about something outside of work and obligations. You made me feel like myself again." He squeezed her hands. "I love you, Natalie. I have loved you for months now, but I was afraid to say it, afraid I would scare you off." Tears pricked her eyes. "You could not scare me off if you tried. I love you too. So much it terrifies me sometimes." He kissed her then, right there on the sidewalk in the growing dawn light, and it felt like a promise. That weekend, he took her to meet his parents. His mother was warm and welcoming, his father quietly proud. They lived in a modest house in the suburbs, the same house where Wyatt had grown up, and they treated Natalie like she had always been part of the family. "He has never brought anyone home before," his mother confided while they were setting the table for dinner. "We were starting to worry he would marry his work. I think his work takes up enough of his life without marrying it too," Natalie joked. "You are good for him. We can see it. He smiles more, laughs more." His mother squeezed her hand. "Thank you for making our boy happy." Natalie met Wyatt's eyes across the room, and the look he gave her was so full of love that she felt it in her bones. 2 weeks later, Wyatt met her family. Her parents loved him immediately, charmed by his manners and his genuine interest in their lives. Her younger brother Thomas grilled him over dinner, asking pointed questions about his intentions and his business, and whether he knew how to change a tire. Wyatt answered everything with patient honesty, never condescending, never dismissive. "I like him," Thomas told Natalie later when they were alone. "He is solid, real, and he looks at you like you are the only person in the room." "He is pretty great," Natalie admitted. "Pretty great." "Nat, the man is crazy about you, and you are crazy about him. When is he going to propose?" "Thomas, we have only been together 6 months." So, when you know, you know. She did know. That was the thing. She knew with a certainty that both thrilled and steadied her that Wyatt was it for her. Her person, her partner, her future. Summer arrived in full force, and with it came changes. Natalie's organization received a surprise grant, anonymous but substantial enough to save them from budget cuts and fund expansion. She knew it was Wyatt despite his innocent denials, but this time it did not make her angry. He had respected her boundaries, had done it quietly and without fanfare, had made sure it could not be traced back to him. It was love expressed in the way he knew how, and she accepted it for what it was. His company broke ground on a new affordable housing project that would provide homes for low-income families. He invited her to the groundbreaking ceremony, and she stood by his side with pride as he spoke about the importance of giving back to the community that had raised him. They moved in together in August, choosing a penthouse apartment downtown with views of the city and enough space for both of them to have their own areas. Her art studio, his home office, shared mornings and shared evenings, and a life built together piece by piece. They still ran together every morning, rain or shine. It had become their time, sacred and separate from everything else. Sometimes they talked about their days ahead or their dreams for the future. Sometimes they ran in comfortable silence, content just to be together. But always, always they ran side by side, matching each other's pace, partners in every sense of the word. It was on one of those morning runs in late September, almost a full year after they had first met, that Wyatt surprised her. They were running along the waterfront, the early autumn air crisp and perfect, when he led her to a bench overlooking the water. It was their bench, the place where they sometimes stopped to cool down and watch the sunrise. "We need to rest already," Natalie teased. "Getting old on me." "No, I just need a moment." He seemed nervous, which was unusual for him. "Do you remember when we first started running together, when you asked me if I was a serial killer?" She laughed. "I remember. You said not even a little bit." "I should have been more honest. I should have said that I was not a serial killer, but I was definitely guilty of something." "Guilty of what?" "Of falling in love with you from that very first morning. Of knowing somehow that you were going to change my entire life." Her breath caught. "Wyatt." He slid off the bench, dropping to one knee, and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "I have thought about how to do this 100 different ways. Fancy restaurant, romantic getaway, some big elaborate production. But the truth is, all our best moments have happened right here on these morning runs. You gave me back my mornings, Natalie. You gave me back my life. Will you give me your future too? Will you marry me?" He opened the box, and inside was a ring that took her breath away. It was beautiful, elegant but not ostentatious, with a diamond that caught the rising sun and threw rainbow light across both their faces. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger, then stood and lifted her into his arms, spinning her around while she laughed and cried and kissed him all at once. Other early morning runners stopped to watch and applaud, and for once Natalie did not care about the attention. All she cared about was the man holding her, the ring on her finger, and the future spreading out before them bright with possibility. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that perfectly balanced their two worlds. The venue was elegant, one of the city's historic estates, but they kept the guest list intimate. Family and close friends only. No business obligations or society expectations, just the people they loved most. Maya was her maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Wyatt's best friend Lucas, who ran another division of Young Properties, stood up as his best man. Natalie wore a dress that made her feel beautiful, and Wyatt looked at her walking down the aisle like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. They wrote their own vows. Natalie promised to match his pace, to be his partner in morning runs and in life, to love him for who he was, not what he had. Wyatt promised to keep her safe without making her feel caged, to challenge her without overwhelming her, to wake up every morning grateful for the day she decided to conquer her fear. There was not a dry eye in the house when they kissed as husband and wife. The reception was held in the estate gardens, with twinkling lights strung through the trees and a band that played everything from classical to modern. They had their first dance to a song about finding home in another person, and Natalie felt the truth of that in her bones. Wyatt was her home now, the place where she felt safest and most herself. Her father gave a toast about how proud he was to welcome Wyatt into their family. Wyatt's mother gave a toast about prayers answered and love found. Maya gave a toast that was equal parts heartfelt and hilarious, ending with a reminder that she had been right about everything from the start. But the toast that stuck with Natalie was the one Wyatt gave at the end of the night. "A year and a half ago," he said, standing with his arm around her waist, "I saw a woman running scared in the early morning light. She was brave and determined and beautiful, and something in me knew I needed to be part of her story. I did it all wrong at first, lurking in the shadows like some kind of weird stalker, but she gave me a chance anyway. She saw past the awkwardness and the money and all the walls I had built up, and she saw me, the real me, and she chose me anyway." He turned to face her fully. "You are the best decision I never knew I was making, Natalie Young. Every morning I wake up next to you is a gift. I promise to never take that for granted." She kissed him then, not caring that everyone was watching, not caring that she was crying again. She just needed him to know, to feel, how much his words meant. How much he meant. They honeymooned in Italy. 2 weeks of sleeping late and exploring ancient cities and eating too much pasta. It was the longest Natalie had gone without running in over a year, and she found she did not miss it as much as she thought she would. What mattered was not the running itself, but the partnership it represented. And they had that whether they were jogging through their neighborhood or wandering hand in hand through Roman streets. When they returned home, they fell back into their routines, but everything felt richer now, deeper. They were not just partners or lovers. They were husband and wife, building a life together with intention and joy. Natalie was promoted to director of her organization when her boss retired, and Wyatt celebrated with her like it was his own achievement. His company expanded into sustainable development, a passion project he had been nurturing for years, and she helped him cut the ribbon at the opening of his first fully green building. They bought a house together after a year of marriage, something outside the city with land and trees and space to grow. It had a home gym where they could run on treadmills during bad weather, and a sunroom that Natalie claimed for her art. They adopted a dog, a rescue mutt named Cooper, who accompanied them on their morning runs and slept at the foot of their bed every night. Life was good. Better than good. It was everything Natalie had been afraid to hope for during those lonely, fearful months before Wyatt had entered her life. 2 years into their marriage, Natalie discovered she was pregnant. She had known she wanted children someday, and they had talked about starting a family, but the reality of it still left her breathless. She told Wyatt during one of their morning runs, unable to wait for a more romantic moment. "I need to tell you something," she said, stopping in the middle of the path. He stopped too, immediately concerned. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right, very right." She took his hands. "I am pregnant." For a moment he just stared at her, processing. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. He let out a whoop of joy, picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down carefully like she was made of glass. "Sorry, is that okay? Can I do that? Are you okay?" She was laughing and crying at the same time. "I am fine. We are fine. We are going to have a baby." "We are going to have a baby," he repeated, wonder in his voice. Then he was kissing her, his hands gentle on her face, his joy palpable. I love you so much. I love you too." They walked home slowly that morning, too excited to run, too full of plans and dreams and joy to do anything but hold hands and grin at each other like fools. The pregnancy was smooth, and Wyatt was the most attentive husband imaginable. He read every parenting book he could find, talked to the baby every night before bed, went to every appointment with a list of questions for the doctor. When Natalie could not run anymore in her 3rd trimester, he walked with her instead, matching her pace just like he always had. Their daughter was born on a cool October morning, exactly 2 years after the morning Wyatt had proposed. They named her Claire Rose Young, and she was perfect. Tiny and beautiful and everything they had not known they needed. Watching Wyatt hold their daughter for the first time, seeing the tears stream down his face as he looked at her with pure love. Natalie felt her heart expand beyond what she thought possible. "You are going to be such a good father," she whispered. "You are going to be an amazing mother," he said back, his voice thick with emotion. They took Claire home to the house they had filled with love, and they learned to be parents together. The sleepless nights, the endless diaper changes, the terrifying responsibility of keeping a tiny human alive. They stumbled through it together, supporting each other, laughing at their mistakes, celebrating every small victory. Their morning runs became early morning walks with Claire in a stroller. They still woke at dawn, still moved through the neighborhood together, still talked about their days and their dreams. The form had changed, but the essence remained. They were partners, matched in pace and purpose, building a life one morning at a time. Natalie sometimes thought back to those early days when she had been so afraid, when the world had felt dangerous and she had felt powerless. It seemed like another lifetime now. She was not afraid anymore. She was strong. She was loved. She was home. And every morning when she woke up next to Wyatt, when she looked at their daughter sleeping peacefully in her crib, when she stepped outside into the dawn light and felt the ground steady beneath her feet, she was grateful. Grateful for the fear that had pushed her to try again. Grateful for the silent stranger who had decided to match her pace. Grateful for every moment that had led her here to this life, to this love. 5 years into their marriage, they had another baby, a son they named Thomas after Natalie's brother. Their house filled with the noise and chaos of young children, with toys scattered across floors and laughter echoing through halls. Wyatt scaled back his hours at work, delegating more so he could be present for these fleeting years when his children were small. Natalie went part-time at her organization, finding balance between the work she loved and the family she adored. They still ran together when they could, early mornings before the kids woke up or occasionally on weekend mornings when grandparents came to babysit. But they also learned to find partnership in new ways, in dividing bedtime duties and planning birthday parties, in supporting each other's dreams while raising their children, in building a marriage that was strong enough to weather the storms and flexible enough to grow. Their 10th anniversary fell on a Saturday morning. The kids were at Wyatt's parents' house for the weekend, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they had the house to themselves. They slept late, made love slowly, then decided to go for a run together. It was a perfect autumn morning, the kind that reminded Natalie of all those mornings years ago when they had been falling in love. They ran their old route, the one they had taken that very first day when Wyatt had finally introduced himself. The sidewalks were the same, the houses familiar, but everything else had changed. They stopped at the bench where he had proposed, and Natalie leaned against him, catching her breath. "You ever think about how different our lives could have been?" she asked. "If you had not decided to be my mysterious guardian angel, if I had not given you a chance, all the time," Wyatt said quietly. "I think about how close I came to never knowing you, to never having this life. It terrifies me. But we found each other." "We found each other," he agreed. He pulled her closer, kissing the top of her head. "And I would find you again in every life, in every version of this story. Even if I did pepper spray you, even then." They sat there as the sun rose higher, watching the neighborhood wake up around them. Other runners passed by. Parents walked with strollers. Life moved forward, constant and changing, and they were part of it all. "Thank you," Natalie said suddenly. "For what?" "For matching my pace. For seeing me when I felt invisible. For loving me even when I was afraid." She turned to look at him. "For giving me back my mornings." "You gave me so much more than mornings," Wyatt said. "You gave me a reason to care, a reason to hope, a life worth living." He kissed her there on their bench in the place where he had asked her to marry him, where they had built the foundation of their future. And Natalie thought about the scared woman she had been, running alone in the dawn light. She thought about all the fear and doubt and pain that had brought her to that moment, and she was grateful for every second of it, because it had led her here, to this man, to this love, to this life that was more than she had ever dreamed possible. They ran home together as the morning sun warmed their backs, perfectly matched, perfectly partnered, perfectly whole. Two people who had found each other in the quiet spaces of dawn and built something extraordinary in the light of day. The years continued to unfold with their share of challenges and triumphs. Wyatt's company weathered a recession but came out stronger for it. Natalie's organization expanded to serve 3 times as many children. Claire started school, showing an artistic talent that made her mother's heart swell with pride. Thomas proved to be a natural athlete, fearless and bold. Through it all, Natalie and Wyatt remained each other's constant. They fought sometimes, disagreed on parenting approaches or finances or whose turn it was to deal with the broken dishwasher. But they always came back to each other, always remembered what mattered, always matched each other's pace, even when the terrain got rough. On their 20th anniversary, they renewed their vows on the same estate where they had been married. Claire was 16 now, elegant and artistic. Thomas was 14, tall and protective of his sister. Their families gathered again, older but no less full of love, to witness them promise forever one more time. 20 years ago, Wyatt said during the ceremony, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, I fell in love with a brave woman who refused to let fear win. She taught me what strength really looks like, what partnership really means, and every day since, she has made me want to be a better man, a better father, a better human. Natalie, you are my pace, my partner, my person. For every morning we have left, I choose you. Natalie, tears streaming down her face, took his hands. 20 years ago, a stranger decided to watch over me in the darkness. He kept his distance but made me feel safe. He showed me that good men exist, that trust is possible, that love can heal even the deepest fears. Wyatt, you gave me back my courage. You gave me a life I was afraid to dream of, and I choose you every morning, every day, for all the years we have ahead. They kissed as their children cheered and their families cried happy tears. 20 years of marriage, 22 years of mornings together. A lifetime of matching each other's pace in running and in life. After the ceremony, as the party continued inside, Natalie and Wyatt snuck away to walk the grounds alone. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. You remember the first thing you ever said to me? Natalie asked. Are you okay? Wyatt smiled. After you fell. You have been asking me that question in 100 different ways for 20 years. And what is your answer? She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. She looked at this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and loved her through it. Who had built a life with her, a family with her, a future with her. This man who still woke up early every morning to run beside her, even when his knees ached and his schedule was packed. This man who had promised to match her pace and had kept that promise every single day. I am better than okay, she said. I am home. He pulled her close, and they stood there in the fading light, two people who had found each other in the darkness and built something beautiful in the dawn. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain but full of promise. There would be more mornings to share, more miles to run, more memories to make. But in that moment, wrapped in her husband's arms, with her children's laughter drifting from inside and the life they had built surrounding them, Natalie felt nothing but profound gratitude for the fear that had pushed her forward, for the man who had matched her pace. For every morning they had shared and every morning yet to come, she had been afraid to run alone, And because of that fear, because of that vulnerability, she had found the love of her life, had built a family, a future, a forever. Sometimes, she thought, the best things in life happen in the moments when we are brave enough to be scared, when we step out into the darkness despite our fear, when we give second chances to mysterious strangers who turn out to be the answer to questions we did not even know we were asking. She had been afraid, but she had run anyway, and in running and taking that chance, she had found everything she never knew she needed. That was the thing about fear. It could paralyze you or it could push you. It could keep you small or it could lead you to something bigger than yourself. The choice was yours. And Natalie had chosen to run toward her fear instead of away from it. And every single morning since, she had been grateful for that choice. They walked back to their party hand in hand, ready to celebrate with their loved ones, ready to embrace whatever came next. Because they would face it together. They would match each other's pace through whatever terrain life brought. They would keep running, keep moving forward, keep choosing each other every single morning, every single day, for all the years ahead, and that was more than enough. That was everything